Hello, everybody. Hello to everybody in the chat. I'm Natalie, and this is Scientology Life After a Cult, where I talk about the fun, exciting things that people are talking about on the internet about Scientology, but also about my 35 years in Scientology, and most importantly, how I left with my family, 3 generations of my family. And I am fortunate enough to also be able to interview different people in the SPTV community, in the community of live streamers who are talking about Scientology. And this is quickly becoming one of my favorite things. So I hope it's your guys' favorite thing too. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. Check your subscribe button and like the video if you like it as we go along. Without further ado, you all know him. You all love him. We've all been scolded by him, and we liked it. And he's out there kicking butt at these protests. Welcome to the main stage. Literally, Surge.
Yay!
You almost need music.
I almost.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It's been like a hot minute since you've been doing all of the things that you've been doing. I just there's so much and I'm so excited. I'm going to try and back it up here.
Sure.
Okay. And if you have a question, put question in all caps if you can and add it then there in the chat. That'd be super helpful. And if you're joining on a replay, jump in the comments. Tell us what you think. If you have any questions there too.
Yeah.
Now, I want to know one of the things I'm most curious about you. And most of you, I think we hardly even need to say who you are. Literally, Surge is his YouTube channel. He's an incredible advocate for children in Scientology, out of Scientology, and has such an amazing story that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. And I want to know, I'm really curious about just who Surge is. And I've seen you're talented. I've seen your dance videos. I have totally creeped on those and they were phenomenal. In
Oh,
fact, I was trying to find the one with the pole to show my Tony and I couldn't find it because I'm like, you should see what he can do with his body.
yes.
So where did you how did you learn to do that?
Um, it's been part of my recovery journey.
Yeah.
Natalie, I watched this documentary freshly out of Scientology that was about strippers.
Yeah.
And it was on a YouTube documentary. And I found it very fascinating, the whole power dynamic of those women that felt so fierce and so strong and so powerful to not be shamed and to own their power. And it was a documentary sort of about that,
Yeah.
and so I was inspired to literally dig into all these areas of my sexuality that had been so weaponized against me, and I
Mhm.
was made to feel so much shame and feel like I was a disgusting person my whole life as a child and everything else like that. And then, it was just became a passion to, and also a way to move the trauma, like how it says, trauma stored in the body.
Yeah.
And I can attest to that because leaving Scientology, once you leave, it's the hardest thing. When we were there, we were numbed. So everything that happened, we were so disassociated that, your brain couldn't even allow you to really see what in the hell was going on. But once you cut that umbilical cord, everything comes crashing down on you. And the come up, it's been almost 10 years now. It's my 9th year, I think.
Wow.
It's that come up with, that you can only take with baby steps of recovery. It's not an overnight. It's not turning a switch. It's not going and floating a needle. It's literally daily dedication to yourself, because that's the whole thing about trauma. Like, it disempowers you. So
Yeah.
what can you do to empower yourself and to work through that pain that is so embedded in you, especially since, I mean, again, you were also born. I'm glad we're both third generations, because that's how it worked for me too. My grandparents were in it, my parents were in it, and then I was born in it. So I think that, it's great to see that the third generation does tend to want to break that generational curse.
Yeah, break that cycle. So when you left, so you've been out of Scientology now for 10 years, and part of your healing journey has involved dance, like you were saying, and working through getting, working the trauma out of the body that way. Did you do any other type of therapy or anything like that? Which you do not have to answer that question if you do not want to.
Oh, no, absolutely. And actually, I wanted to, because, I saw the episode you talked with your sister about the ketamine treatments.
Yeah, yeah.
I've had a very holistic approach to my recovery journey. I've had to do different types of, hallucinogenics therapies. There's another therapy called Iboga that I did that was very beneficial to purge out just so much trauma stored in our brains. And, it's again, it's like, I've gone to therapy, like, with a therapist. I've gone to the psychiatrist. It's like, when you're that ill, it's not just a one size fits all, and it's our
Hmm.
recovery journey. We get to choose what works for us.
Yeah,
Like, we're not all the same. We're not all the same. I'm not saying this is going to be the end all, or if you do ketamine treatment, you're going to feel that's it. There's just so much actual science, that we were told, like, the brain is nothing. And they're trying to tell you that you're an animal. I mean, I remember that's what the pitch was. It's like, oh, we tell you that you're a spirit here, but psychiatry tells you you're an animal. So
yeah,
gross. Psychiatry's gross. And it's like, now that understanding more about anatomy and not being so disassociated, then little by little you can start sort of gaining ground and piecing yourself back together. Because the truth is, once they're done with you, you are disposed of as roadkill. And we know how many little success stories we have, of people that live to tell or get their power back. I mean, everyone in SPTV is obviously on that journey.
hmm,
And, but it's never over now. For the rest of our lives, we are handicapped. I mean, we look like we're perfect, but we would know how many, you know, things we have to overcome on a daily basis all the time.
yeah. What has it been like for you to go and do these protests and to, meet the different live streamers, the different people protesting, be there at the blue buildings, be there on L. Ron Hubbard Way? What
Mhm.
has that been like for you personally?
I mean, it's such a I feel so grateful to be on this part of my recovery journey.
Mhm.
I feel supported and heard for the first time in my life.
The first time with this community out there. That's really beautiful.
And just like these kids are so passionate about seeing something so horrendous happening. It's like, it started kind of like, oh, it's a cult, it's this, it's that,
Mhm.
Sebastian, and it was a TikTok trend, but it's like the TikTok trend ended, and TikTok has already canceled Jessica's account and Streets LA's account, and these kids are not stopping. And they're there when it rains, and they're there at night, and they're there just dedicated, and no one's running anybody, because it's a volunteer situation. It's like people exercising their First Amendment right, which is something that was canceled for us inside of those hotels. You weren't allowed to speak, you weren't allowed to state an opinion. You had to fall in line, or your head was going to be put on a pike.
Yeah.
So to see this generation come through for us and care, and show us compassion and humanity. It's like, the corporate media has just been all about exploiting us, dehumanizing us, grifting, making money on our pain. And, they couldn't be so, doing the bidding of these hotels and commercial buildings, because, the public perception is that a First Amendment right is being practiced by these people. And we should be so, you know, um, yeah, we should just be so like grateful that everyone gets to do whatever. But again, going back to this point of the kids, it's like we
Yeah.
lived this hell as kids, and you know, who would we be if we would not come back and be the advocate that we needed when nobody was inside for
Yeah.
us? Like, there was nothing we could do. And, you have these like visions of being saved. I mean, I remember like so many times just thinking somebody's going to come and say, the kids cannot be here, because there were so many kids on staff. There were so many kids in the Sea Org, and that's also what
Yeah.
made it so confusing. Like, you think, okay, well, it cannot be that, but it's still like, I just always remember just feeling so helpless, you know. So to have the support of community members and to have our backs, just so unconditionally and with no agenda. It's
Yeah.
like,
And to be there and be volunteering to be there. Do you think that the kids there that you're getting to know understand that? I mean, I think they will after seeing this and hearing other people like you who've been speaking out about this. Do you think they really realize the impact that this is having on people in the ex-Scientology community and potentially other communities where people felt that they were in a control, high control group or a cult?
well, I'll tell you, Natalie, like their questions, I've spoken to the media for the last 9 years. Since I left, I thought, okay, we're going to really get the reporters to really understand what happens in the hotels, and then all of a sudden we're going to write a story, and then all of a sudden, people will be like, oh my God, we have no idea. And I spoke to the Tampa Bay Times for years, providing them receipts, providing them my firsthand account, providing them with my affidavits, providing them with full-blown unfeathered access to my whole entire police investigation, and not a shred of letter that those people at the Tampa Bay Times write.
Mhm.
How dare they not care about kids who cannot consent? How dare they give this hotel the credibility it needs to continue abusing minors with impunity? you know so
Mhm.
now compare it to these kids who do ask you right questions, do ask you smart questions, are interested in finding out what it is, right? Because the biggest difference between these incredible kids that are true activists is that they care, that they don't have an agenda, and they're willing to have skin in the game, right?
Mm.
Like they've been
Mhm.
there for 3 months. They're not being told what it is. They're finding information to contextualize some of the things that they are seeing with their eyes and then capturing on these lives. And, I feel like that's why people are getting so, addicted to these streams, because, people realize when the truth is being shown to them. This
They
is not a
do.
pitch. This is not a curated thing to make us look so cool and aren't we so special? Like, no, these are kids that are spending the time, and they have amazing personalities. They're smart AF. They don't miss a beat. So much of it reminds me of how we were. I mean, you were an ethics officer back then, and younger even. We were
Mhm.
even younger, but you know, because they're pretty much all under over 21, I believe, at least like the main ones. But there's all ages that are interested in this, and they have like the whole TikTok Gen Z community that's been wanting to hear about it. Now, thanks to TikTok, no, because Jessica's account is canceled, and there's all manner of other fair game, corrupt tactics being implemented to shut us up.
Yeah.
But they couldn't be more aware of what's happening now, and they couldn't be more disgusted, and they couldn't be more aware that they do have a First Amendment right, despite all of what LAPD is doing to us, despite all the harassment, despite all the unfounded, outrageous allegations that Scientology's been on the record making for decades. I mean, as if they didn't frame Paulette Cooper for BOMBs, but
Yep.
then they're quickly to project that we have a BOMB. Oh yeah, somebody has a BOMB. Oh yeah, somebody has a JUN. Like, you know, they're too pressed because again, it's like they've never been questioned. They've never been under that level of scrutiny. They've never been recording the receipts. It's like I just saw this video. I mean, things like break so fast. Like the DOA, Defender of Ants,
Mhm.
attacked by an unhinged older man. They're now sending all these older men to attack us and to intimidate us. And they send them with little dogs. So they look real like, oh, aren't they so sweet? And, they're under orders. We know how they
Yeah.
operate. Like they cannot fool us.
Mhm.
We know who they are and they don't like that.
Yeah.
They really don't like that.
What has it been like in working with these? We call them the kids, and I'm going to keep calling them the kids, even though they're all most of them over 18, because they're younger than my own children,
Yeah.
and I have nothing but respect for them and what they are doing. How how has it? And I'd like to talk to some of them too. I think I'm going to have to because this is kind of my question, and because you're there, you might know.
Sure.
How is it impacting them in seeing the difference that they're making in shutting down a Hollywood test center, in having the impact even that they've had in your healing? And like you shared, that this is the first time that anyone's shown up for you in that way. Do
Mhm.
they realize the impact that they're creating?
Well, what's beautiful is that they're building their own communities, right? And it's like that's what's so interesting about this live streaming. We all have this incredible, diverse communities that are building surrounding us. And, it's like I feel like it's almost like a video game. Like pick your character. There's so many characters to choose. I'm gonna go this live stream, go to the live stream, and we all have our own way of advocating. We all have our own way of communicating. There's no sanitized pitches or everyone say this now or everyone say that. It's like everyone gets
Mm.
to exercise their freedom of speech and call to question these outrageous practices and the trafficking going on. I mean, one of the cutest things that I like about them is that they're obsessed with the motherships, like the bug.
Yeah.
It's like they get so much pleasure out of catching them in the act. Never mind that now Scientology, because they see that we get pleasure out of that. It's like, oh no, let's not do that for them. So
Yeah.
let's come up with all these ways to hide, because that's the only mode they have to hide, and to hide some more. And, we really have to wonder why they have $3 billion in the bank, are using underage minors as we speak, because I think that their focus has switched a lot in their advocacy. Even the questions they ask, it's like, I don't remember ever anyone saying you're child traffickers to any protest that the few that have been done in the past, it's like they haven't ever been accused of that. And I mean, these kids have gotten to know Lara, Liz,
Mm.
Aaron, myself, and even all of you guys' channels, because, that the info is there. It's in the public record, right? Like you cannot claim that you don't know anymore. So I just love that they have their own communities and their own people, and that's what this is about. Like have a community of survivors that can stand behind you. And that's the other thing too. It's like there's so many survivors of trauma being represented by our cause, because we get to show them that justice is important and necessary, and that we can empower survivors. And that is, even as a survivor, empowering another survivor, even that's helping you in this journey of recovery. And I think that's the only reason that we're getting to see so many people, wanting to tune in to this, because they're seeing justice. They're seeing actually the American Constitution, the First Amendment right, being applied in the right way, instead of being exploited with loopholes and sanitized narratives that have nothing to do with reality. Because we're not protesting that people can practice a religion. Nobody cares,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I think that that's why I've specifically made the hashtag kids can consent, because as much as people want to save all the adults, as we were just talking about Gayla, it's like that's not a thing. And as
Mhm.
much as you cannot go to the police and say, oh, save that adult. It's not a thing. Someone can be a stripper and we can all hate it, but you can't grab her and take her out.
Yeah.
Everyone's allowed to be themselves,
Mhm.
afforded by the First Amendment. So these people have utilized very, very crooked attorneys to twist and turn everything. Attorneys that you would know, Natalie. When did you ever see attorneys checking the hotel? What in the hell was going on? When?
Yeah, exactly. Didn't happen.
And how many of them are being paid so much money? And understanding how the law works now, right? It's taken me so long to understand even that side of the world, because
Yeah.
we had no tools to even understand that. And it's a world that is complicated. It's not that easy to understand how justice is supposed to be administered. So there's a lot of nuance, but we're all in this together. Everyone brings their little drop of water to this bucket. That's
That's
how I
so
feel.
true. And we're seeing that. Do you think it's poetic the way that, again, there's with it, what originally started as this TikTok movement? So it's so many, they tend to be younger people. Do you feel it's poetic in that, especially with what you're so passionate about and that passion you bring to saving kids, that it's really in the end that it's kids saving kids? Again, even though they're legal adults, they're these just really young people, and that they're bringing that and making the difference. And then there's people of all ages starting to come together towards bringing attention to this and showing up for people who need somebody to show up for them. And that's a theme we hear a lot of, and a lot of us have shared in the ex-Scientology community. And I think it's by nature of being in a cult, even when you talk about, not having somebody there to protect you or feeling protected. What does all that do for you in the road that you've traveled and what you've done in your healing? How are you finding it? Because you're living it in real time now, where you're experiencing this with them. What has that done for your healing?
Well, I think it's wonderful. I mean, and we just had Liz Gale here, and Jenna Miscavige and Lara, and I see it in all of us. It's like the time goes by so fast. We're there literally doing nothing other than being in front of our phones like this. It's almost like ridiculous, right? Because it's like everyone's just standing there, and it's there's no agenda. Nobody has an agenda.
Yeah.
We're just capturing receipts. We're just capturing information, and we are building community over what the Constitution says we are allowed to do. And in Scientology, I think it's taken us so long to even be here because, and I say this, before, Natalie, courage is contagious. And shout out to William Gold from Streets LA. He was the first person that smelled a rat. We've never had in our lifetime, at least for me, any examples of actual courage, any examples of standing up for what's right without having to have a whole group of approval people that you all come and then you're so cool and you're so this and you're so that. It's like Streets LA is showing actual leadership. It's showing up for all of us. And he's the one that initiated that initial, bust of going and being like, oh, he's doing a First Amendment audit. And now we're becoming First Amendment auditors as well. And, that is the only power of balance that we have for checks and balances, right? Because when organizations are all being propped up by so-called legal schmiegel, is what I call it now. Legal schmiegel. It's all just like, it's all just PR. It's all just complete and utter PR. And as long as money's behind that PR, they get away with it. And these kids that are not programmed to just take what they're told at face value and that actually observe, which is actually something that, as an investigator since a child, like my life depended on being able to investigate. And, that one of the phrases that L. Ron Hubbard says is look, don't listen.
Yeah.
So you can be told a lot of things, but don't listen to what you're being told. Like, what do you see? Oh, they leave at 2 a.m. at night. And, Jessica Palmadesa was the other day saying, like, why do you have all those people what's going on? Like, you know what I
What are
mean?
you
They're
doing
not
in there?
groomed.
Yeah.
So they're not groomed. They don't give an F about the corporate media. They know that they're just liars and manipulators and grifters and data miners. And, it's like, in what world can the corporate media do anything when they're almost in the same business as Scientology is? Data mining, manipulating, sanitizing images. And in fact, they have no skin in the game because, and I can say that for Scientology investigations, because their biggest investigations is go talk to a lot of people and be told how it was, be told what happened. How are you going to investigate if you're just getting told? Like you don't have any skin in the game. Again, it's like, but the fact that we have become a multi-million-dollar, what is it called? Like clickbait for them. They know that if they put a story about us, they're just cashing checks for themselves quickly, right? And then their legal departments water everything down, wash it all off, because, it's not kosher to talk about child trafficking. It's like, that's one of the reasons that I'm so pissed off with the TikTok leadership. It's like, in what world are y'all having a platform for kids and then raising awareness of trafficking, showing these kids how they can be trafficked? I mean, Scientology doesn't have a monopoly of child trafficking.
Yeah.
They have a business model that gets followed by all the traffickers, because again, traffickers, what do? Law bomb you, tell you how great you are. You feel very special. Then you feel you're part of something special. And before you know it, you're so implicated. And before you know it, they have dehumanized you. And now you're just a pawn and a puppet. They groomed you with a lot of words that you and your abuser will really know what the hell they mean.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, enough is enough. Like, this is just, we've had enough of it. And so I think that they're doing the job that the corporate media that's been paid to do a job refuses to do.
Yeah, it's really impressive. And also doing it in a way, being there and hearing these stories and not pulling away from it, because many of them are uncomfortable and they should be, but still being there. And at the same time, bringing this levity with the, let's go get the, the mother, what do they call it? The
The
mothership.
mothership.
And
The mothership.
maybe we could clarify too some of the terms, because I've seen in the chat a lot questions
Yeah.
on what they mean by those things.
Yeah.
So let's start with the mothership. Can you tell people what the mothership is when the young folk are talking about the mothership? What do they mean?
So the mothership are the buses, you guys, the big, big buses. So we saw motherships at the event that they held in not Pasadena, the event that it just happened at the Valley org.
Yeah,
So they had like these big buses where everybody gets like cramped up.
sure.
But now that, they've been calling them motherships, now they've downsized to whales, and whales are vans.
Oh, whales are the vans.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So whales are vans, big buses are motherships. Tell me
Yes.
about ducks. What are
So,
duckies and ducks?
so ducks is a term coined by Confident Chris. He started calling them like, oh, look, there's the ducks, the duckies. And I just like, I found it so appropriate. I was like, oh my God, and then I kind of ran with it and started, actually understanding, okay, so what is a duck? A duck is an adult who doesn't give an F about, abuse of kids,
Mhm.
because that's really kind of like, if we were to define that for what it means to me, it's like, I know those people inside of those hotels don't care. Why? Because the rhetoric adulticizes all kids that are implicated, and then it infantilizes all of the adults. So that is outrageous and indefensible. Adults are adults. Kids are kids. That is a fact. So,
Mhm.
so docs are just adults who don't give an F about child abuse. And that includes the LAPD. That includes Karen Bass. That includes everyone that doesn't give an F. Because again, it couldn't be more clear. It couldn't be more obvious what we're advocating for. And again, this is a side of this situation that we can advocate for, right? Because it's like, again, it's like no cop can come and intervene between an adult doing something. Like, that's why Shelly cannot be saved. In what world can Shelly be saved? Shelly can be interrogated by the FBI for all the crimes that she was covering up for Dave and with Dave and all of that. But it's like, in what world was Ghislaine Maxwell going to really come get saved from Jeffrey Epstein? It's like, predators don't want to be saved. Predators want to be left alone doing what in the hell they love, sticking their fangs in victims and sucking their blood. And we're questioning that as an industrial size scale activity that's been allowed to just proliferate in these hotels with these horrible false pitches from a convicted felon, L. Ron Hubbard, that, unfortunately turned even our own parents into predators. Like,
Yeah.
did I ever think that my mom was signing up to be a predator? I will never know, Natalie, because I never knew her not being an L. Ron Hubbard protege.
Where are your parents now?
I have no idea. I haven't talked to them since I left, like probably 9 years ago. And I just don't keep tabs. My parents to me are my traffickers. Like, they were the benefactors, financial benefactors of me getting scammed into the hotel, And my parents didn't join the hotel themselves because they didn't want to be in the Sea Org, because they knew what it was. And it's like, in what world did you put me up to that and not do it yourself? I have a little more compassion for, maybe you were in the Sea Org too, and then you ended up with your kids there and you were all confused, but so Sandra and Pedro Gil, I don't know where they are, and I don't even care.
Yeah. Did you have any siblings, or do you have any siblings?
Two sisters. Yeah.
Are
Two
they
sisters that
also?
never joined the Sea Org. And again, it's like, now they're adults, and now they're making a choice. And the problem is they also need to be called out because they're not in the Sea Org. So they're not being child trafficked themselves. So as long as you didn't get child trafficked and then yourself, then you're okay with everything. You know what I mean? My sister, Monica, works for Nancy Cartwright. She's one of her big executives there. My sister didn't even go to high school. She's really beautiful and she's
Mhm.
a total bitch. And as you know, it's like that energy is very much rewarded in the cult. If you're gorgeous and you're a bitch, then you go real high.
Mhm.
All of David's top RTC reps had those two things in common. They had to be really beautiful and they had to be like total ruthless bitchs. So that's what's considered ethical, and
Mhm.
ruthlessness and being real tough and hard. And it's just dehumanizing, right? Because it's like, at the end of the day, it's not normal to act that unhinged and whatever, but everyone's groomed and then everyone's allowed to be
Yeah.
that. So
How are the kids who you're protesting and live streaming with? How are they feeling about with TikTok accounts being, shut down, and the way that Scientology is choosing to respond with playing the Flag Is Here song over and over and over and over again? Those type of tactics, there's things that being ex-Scientologists were like, yeah, of course they would do that. But even sometimes these days they're surprising me. But how are the people who have never been in Scientology and are there at this protest? What do they think about it?
well, I think that they're outraged, and Scientology, the more they do this, the more they know that something is there, right? Like, their intimidation tactics couldn't be more pathetic because, number one, we have a long standing pattern showing up that anyone that can Google fair game can see. Oh my God, they've been doing this for decades. It's always the same playbook. It's always the same criminal racketeering behavior. It's a pattern of criminal acts committed with full impunity, with full knowing, with complete bad faith. They're not constitutionally protected anything. We're not following people to their houses and harassing
Yeah.
them and doing something to their internet and hacking them. Like, that's what Scientology does. And
Mhm.
imagine the LAPD stands on the side to protect that. And again, it's like, in what world can you be an LAPD detective and not have a shred of a clue how to investigate, Natalie? Like, look, like, if we would have investigated like that when we were kids, our heads would be on a pike.
Yeah.
So shout out to L. Ron Hubbard that did teach us a few things about investigating. And when things don't make sense, you pull the string because there's always something behind it. So right now we're pulling strings because they're real scared that their Sherman tank is getting exposed.
Yeah.
And their
That's so
Sherman
true.
tank is, the racketeering scheme that they got going on for themselves. It's an international child trafficking cult from hell taking place in hotels. Is literally, I mean, the only thing that I can compare it to, Natalie, is Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine on crack and steroids. Why? And I want to be very specific. So it's not just like, oh, no, blackmail, Jeffrey and Ghislaine. Video recorded, Jeffrey and Ghislaine. Florida hosting it. I mean, Clearwater hosted it much more than Palm Beach, but this all happened in Palm Beach. Celebrities and VIPs all implicated, all blackmailed through what? Through data mining of these, self-incriminating tactics. Like, that's what we were doing. That's what we were expected to do. So it couldn't be more. And, the only thing that is different is, Jelaine and Jeffrey used, kids for massages. I mean, we were used for massages too. Nervouses, touch this random adult, stay there for 2 hours. The only difference is that Jelaine and Jeffrey paid those girls $200 for that. And then they got to go home.
Yeah,
We didn't.
we didn't get no $200.
We didn't get
I'm
well,
still
no, they
waiting on
charge
my check.
they charge, $500 to $1,000 per hour, and then the kid wouldn't get the check, and it was just getting cashed by the adults that are selling this service and selling
Mhm.
kids and selling intensives 12 and a half hours. I mean, people had the capacity to buy 12 and a half hours, one package, right? And it's like you could buy up to 100 hours to be interrogated by, like what we said, with Aaron. Natalie Galbiati, oh yeah, I want to pay, $50,000. And then all of a sudden I own Natalie for the next 100 hours. She owes me being in that hotel, listening to whatever I want. There's no boundaries. There's no guardrails. The power dynamic imbalances couldn't be more unthinkable and indefensible and disgusting.
Yeah. Big beings in little bodies, right? No such thing as a kid, which is one of the things I think a lot of that goes back to in Scientology, or the beliefs and the dictates of L. Ron Hubbard, and how he laid that out.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to come next with the protests going on, with more exposure, with just, I mean, more and more people are going to be, if not joining the protest, wanting to come and learn and find out more about what's going on, what's the deal with Scientology? How do you see this going? If we looked into the literal surge crystal ball, what would we see?
Well, I think that it's a movement that is 100% organic. There is no leadership, there is no controller. Like I said, everyone is building their own community of supporters. And then we all share that community that is watching over the facts. And this is so effective because, again, it's like we can all sit here and talk about this and talk about that. But now we're bringing receipts that I call platinum receipts, right? When you have a video, that's a platinum receipt.
Yeah. Can you
So
explain? Someone had asked what you mean when you say receipts. Receipts, I think, is that a Gen Z term, or is that just it's a Gen Z term? I think a lot of us, and let me speak for the Gen X here, we're catching up on the terminology, the ducks, the whales, the moonbeams buses, the and the receipts. I've learned about the receipts. I've been
yeah,
saying it all the time now. I'm going to show
yeah.
you the receipts. So explain
Yeah,
to
I mean,
people
the
what that
receipt is,
is.
something you can use to back up what you're saying. So you're
Yeah.
not just, saying something without having some sort of proof to back up what you're saying, because,
Mhm.
you can claim, anyone can allege a million things. And, even going to the court to sit and listen to what these attorneys are talking about, on the Leah Remini lawsuit, like you learn that you can't just blab and not bring, okay, this is why I said this here,
Yeah.
boom.
Yeah.
So video recordings are platinum receipts. They're things that everyone can watch. Oh, did you not get that? Let's rewind it. Oh, did you not get that? Let's rewind it. That's why the LAPD is going to have a hell of a time trying to really wiggle themselves out of this situation where they've been caught literally being on the wrong side of the law, detaining people, harassing people. Is They are the ones that are now doing Scientology's bidding. And
Yeah.
I mean, Natalie, that's what's so confusing. If you were to ask me what's most confusing thing you've seen, is
Yeah.
their support, their ardent support to be on the wrong side of the law. And it's like, I gave them for a very long time this benefit of the doubt, because it's like, well, they really, you wouldn't know how they operated, right, Natalie? Because we knew how much Scientology goes through lengths to portray this picture of, very sanitized, right? Because it's like, it's all about perception for them, right? Like that's all the crisis management all day long. Like, how are people going to perceive it? And that's why it was so dangerous for us to ever speak to the facts. But the LAPD, it's like, it's so confusing how the entire leadership of this LAPD, that the Mayor Karen Bass, who literally shared a stage with David Miscavige, are showing up completely kneecapped to
Mhm.
to do anything. Like there's just nothing. There's no way to rein back the corruption that's playing up, and it's all being caught on tape. So where do I see this going? I see it going in baby steps, because nothing changes overnight. And
Exactly.
the First Amendment right is we're only allowed to protest on a sidewalk, on a public space, and that's it. And that nothing's guaranteed. Nothing comes with guarantees. Nothing comes with
Mhm.
nothing. Like nothing, maybe nothing will happen, but I believe that one of the wonderful things about having community behind you is that, there's a lot of very concerned mothers. I mean, the amount of messages that I've gotten from concerned mothers,
Mhm.
concerned fathers, that's humanity, right? Like, America doesn't want to prop up child trafficking. Like,
Mhm.
that's not what Americans want in their soil. So that's what Scientology attorneys wanted, and that's what they did. And they're the ones that have been lying to the courts, putting their law licenses on the line, because who cares? The State Bar Association, as long as you have a very fancy name, doesn't give a shred of an F
Mhm.
to double check your work and to double check that you're not just submitting whatever in the hell you want. And again, it's like these courts were easily duped, which is a tragedy. The IRS implicating themselves in this and really buying the pitch that, oh, yeah, these people can First Amendment write whatever they want in a hotel, in a commercial building, and no one can have a shred of an opinion about it because, that's what I've seen them do in court. They just say the orthodoxy, the ecclesiastical nature. And it's like, you can't just use a couple of words without
Yeah.
receipts, right? Like, where's the receipt? It's like, we see a
Mhm.
hotel. So why are you blabbing your mouth about this being a church when people are checking in and getting room service, including but not limited to delivered by a child underage? I mean, this is not common, Natalie. Like, the Jehovah's Witnesses don't have hotels. The Christians don't have hotels. No other religion in the whole wide world has hotels.
Yeah.
So in what world is that contrary fact, which is what Elvin Hubbard said? It's like, this is a contrary fact. You say it's a church, but we see a hotel.
Yeah.
So
It's an
that doesn't
outpost.
add up.
Yeah. It seems, I think too, that with this, and that's the neat thing about these younger generations, younger than me, I mean, it's your generation and like the Gen Zs, is they know more about what their rights should be, what their civil rights are, what they know these things, and they're getting more of an education on it through what William Good has shared in, starting the live streaming and the protesting outside of the Hollywood Testing Center to start, and now it's spreading elsewhere. And it's there's such value to that, and I think that, and we're seeing it more and more, where the younger generations are getting more involved even politically, and
Mhm,
it opens the door to many more of them also now taking that next step, which is contacting people in Congress, contacting our elected leaders and
mhm,
asking them about where they stand on Scientology and the tax exempt status. It's everything that's happened, the attention that's been brought through the protests, the things that we share to raise awareness in your stories and so many people's stories, my own, is to raise awareness about it. And with the sheer numbers of people who are now joining this and have never been in Scientology, but they're willing to lend their voice because they're looking and going, you know what? That's not okay. That's
mhm.
not okay. Because these things, trust me when I tell you, people, you don't stop it when you see it. It pops up someplace else and it's going to pop up closer to you. So now
Yeah.
we have an opportunity to do something about it and even make an example out of Scientology. They're one cult. There are many other cults as well. And I think it really sends a message, and I think that this younger generation is they're just not having it. And at the same time, I think people of all ages, even mine, are really having our eyes open too because of it and being inspired. I find myself being very inspired
Mhm,
by what a lot of these younger people are doing, yourself included, Serge. I started watching your videos. I called my sister. I'm like, did you know you were human trafficked? Because she was sent into this York when she was 14. And she's like, yeah, I've known that
mhm,
for a while. I'm like, I never saw it like that.
mhm.
I didn't think about it like that. I kind of trafficked myself into the Sea Org at 16, but I didn't have, I was on my own. We didn't have our parents. I was
But
on my own.
even that is not a fact, because it's like kids do not,
Yeah.
we may have been, in, like you just said, in an untenable position, because we were adulticized and our parents, it's so unfortunate. It's so tragic, Natalie, because again, it's like the cognitive dissonance couldn't have been more delusional, right? They weren't taking drugs, and they made a big deal that, oh, we are so ethical because we don't do drugs. But
Yeah.
the drug was the fake pitch, right? The drug was that we were adults, and that they really went with that on a level that is really unthinkable. So,
Yeah,
you know,
Scientology was the drug. Scientology was the
yeah,
drug. Those beginning things where that they make sense because L. Ron Hubbard stole them from other places. And you go, you know what? This makes sense. I'm getting some wins out of this. It's helping me in my life. And you chase that high all the way up the bridge to total freedom, all the way up. You're chasing that initial high. And I
yeah,
think Scientology, I bet if they did studies, brain studies, somebody should do this. Somebody make note where you could study people's brains who've been in cults or Scientology. You know what? Maybe somebody already has. This is probably not an original idea, but what that would look like, right? Because we've seen brain studies done on when somebody's taking drugs and the effect it has on the brain and the effect that being in a cult and things has. I think it would be really interesting because many of the way I've seen people, especially who I would consider to be more extreme in their Scientology, like there's culty, then there's like massively culty, and where the culty people are looking at them going, "Wow, you're really being culty." I mean, at that point it's gotta be bad. It's all different gradients of it, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And we're all just, I think, learning as we come down from that and coming down from that and finding a different way of living, a different way to process, and a different way to be, that cult culture sheds off at different speeds for different people and in different ways. And it's beautiful when, regardless of what those differences are, people can come together and at least work towards this common goal. And I just love seeing so many people never in Scientology picking up that cause. And like you said, showing up, it's impactful, very impactfful. Are you?
absolutely. I mean,
I'm going to grab a couple questions if you're up for it.
I just wanted to say a couple of things on what you just pointed out, right? I mean, number one, in terms of the brain, and this is again why the kids cannot consent, to me, is the only real, like, full advocacy we can do, because kids being trapped in those hotels, being interrogated, and I knew how that was done because I was doing it. I was doing it since age 12, right? Being locked up against your will, being asked disgusting questions, and the level of disassociation that came with the audits. And
Yeah.
Natalie, like, I was a kid that was able to, at 12, understand the so-called mechanics, right? Because I was able to read that stupid rhetoric and kind of understand what it was, how the manipulation was happening. But to me, the thing that, like, really tears my heart apart is that so many kids could not intellectually, their brain power, because they were kids, could not intellectually understand anything. So they have years and years and years where they would be interrogated for 5, 6 hours. All of that is, they cannot tell you what was done. They cannot tell you what was asked. They cannot even make sense of it because none of it makes sense, right? It's like the
Yeah.
whole thing was a role play of disgusting power dynamics that should never have played out, that we should have always been protected. And yes, the adults, when you are of age to consent and you are part of the joke, if you're in on the joke, consenting to the joke, I'm sure you could find it funny, right? But it's like, if you play a sick joke on an 8-year-old that's not in on the joke, their brain will be fried. And depending on how extreme it is, and given that they had no shred of concern
Yeah.
of what the age was, that's what's being questioned today for all kids that are just being delivered Scientology ethics handlings, courses, or audits. Scientology is only those three things. It's nothing else. As long as people make it so confusing, it's this, it's that, it's a religion. Scientology is courses that take place in a grooming salon, yes, with dolls and teddy bears, where everything is like, oh yeah, drill it on a teddy bear and ask the teddy bear if they've ever stolen an apple. So it all sounds so gamified, and then audits, where you are locked up against your will and you are told, oh, look, here's the policy where L. Ron Hubbard says you can never end the session on your own determinism. And as a child, you think like, oh, I guess I'm consenting to this because they showed me the thing, they groomed me to take it. And again, it's all presented very sanitized, and then ethics handlings where, ethics officers, I mean, I think ethics handlings were the most unhinged and the place you less wanted to be, because the people there, they could just be, I mean, once you went to ethics, then you were fair game, fair bait. They
Mhm.
could just take it as hard as they wanted to until you became submissive again, which is, fawning, and being in a state of fawn your whole childhood is no place for a child to be a fawn, and the difference between these kids that are here is like they're not fawns. Their
Mhm.
parents allowed them to be kids. They raised them. They went to schools. They're very tech savvy. They know that the Constitution says what it says, so they're actually grounded in reality, right? But it's like that's something that no child inside of those hotels knows. And especially with the unthinkable thing that one of the hardest things to reconcile after I left is my parents put me up to this. Like they put me in harm's way, and then they doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down. Like there was just never a shred of reining anything back.
Mhm.
So, and then the other thing about cults, like cult terms to be, I feel like we're in this year 2024, we have to really understand that, racketeering is, I mean, you could call it a cult. I mean, I'm sure every gang, I'm sure the narcos are part of a cult because everybody does it, but it's called racketeering. It's called organized crime, right? And cult gives this like sort of like symbolism of like, of just people that are all just victims, all part of a victim narrative. And the fact is, and I just brought this up with Aaron, is like, Charles Manson's enablers and groupies and proteges, they were in a cult, but they went and did time in jail because they conspired. And
Mhm.
so we have to understand like what the actual real words are, because that's the law. That's when the law comes in. It's called a conspiracy when 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 adults plan, sit down and go, let's do this, let's do that, let's do that. And then all of that turns out to be breaking the law. And what happens then is then everyone's implicated, right? When in RICO cases, it's not like you, and let's really make a lot of exceptions for you. You're all implicated. You're all in this conspiracy together. And now we need to get down to the facts. We need to, force that the FBI, who has a track record, Natalie, of having found all the receipts. Scientology keeps on itself because it's like that's the thing that's also so outrageous and almost fully insane. Like you would think that the criminals and organized crime don't keep receipts on themselves because they don't want to get caught. And in
Yeah.
Scientology, it's the opposite. In
Yeah, they write
Scientology, like,
everything down.
write it all
They
down,
record
video
it.
record
They
everything,
take
put it
videos
all
of
in
it.
writing. And then it's like, okay, well, where's the plausible deniability? Because that's what I'm asking today in the year 2024. In what world did you do this without knowing? And I just, I feel like we can also understand that, we don't need a prosecutor to tell us this was organized crime when we lived it.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, fine. It's an allegation that we are making. It's in our opinion and something I learned from this judge that was talking to the Scientology attorneys, because in that case, Scientology was calling Leah a Nazi, and the attorneys were like, it's being, well, it's in your opinion, it's like, was she really that? I mean, everybody knows that she's really not that. So it's sort of like, okay, so it's like we're allowed to speak. We're allowed to say what we need to say, and the more receipts you can bring to the table to back up what you're saying, the better, so that the truth can be reconciled, and we can all learn from this horrific example in history. Our
Definitely.
childhoods were stolen, but now we can make sure that no other childhoods get stolen if there's any alchemization to make out of this, because we'll advocate fearlessly, and we're not going to be told how to feel about it anymore, or what to say or how to say it. It's not a PR situation. This is not about catering to the status quo. This is about getting the facts exposed and then enforcing the people that we pay, law enforcement, to do a job that they are actually very well aware how to do.
Absolutely. So, Serge, you're getting even closer to getting the word out more and more and more. Congratulations. You just hit 10,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Yay.
Yay. The
Wonderful.
chat was going crazy.
Mm, yay.
So
That's what I say, Natalie. It's
congratulations.
like the idea that 10,000 people would literally stand behind you,
Mhm.
and again, this is like we're just getting started right now. We're not starting with this advocacy. And like you said, even when these people get shut down, there's plenty other rackets going on.
Oh, yeah.
And the more we can influence other survivors so that they go, oh, I can do that too.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
it's
can
okay
escape
to
your
stand
cult
up to
too.
it. Yeah,
Totally.
it's okay to stand up to it. It's okay to get the facts exposed. And there's a quote for Martin Luther King that says that we're not outnumbered, we're unorganized. And
Yeah.
these platforms are allowing us to organize and to
Mhm.
protest peacefully. Nobody wants to hurt nobody. We just want to protect those kids that are there, and the adults that are doing it need to be facing the full force of the law as the law states exactly how it is. Like, we're not here to administer that justice or make those decisions or cut deals or not. All of that is way above our pay grade. We're not, but we are the ones that received the trauma and the unlawful things. So the sooner that law enforcement stops playing dumb, the better it is for any kid that is, suffering right now, as we know.
I agree. Let's grab some questions and comments. CB, thank you so much. I'm recently out of a cult. It was the second and third generation that called out the abuses of the people in power and how the parents ignored the abuse, allowing it to happen. Their stories are heartbreaking. That's very
Yay.
true.
Thank you,
It's going to
CB.
be that second, third generation that is going to change things. Full Court Press has a question. Will I work on asking Southern California House reps if they were reelected? Would they be willing to hold hearings on Scientology's tax exemption? What other questions should I ask? Probably I would ask what they know about Scientology, because I think some of them,
I would
oddly
ask him
enough, would not
this.
hear. You would ask them what?
I would ask him this. Are kids able to consent to hardcore role plays where no boundaries are going to be allowed in a hotel room? Because in a nutshell, that's what Owen Hubbard entitled his proteges to do. And when I call it a role play, let's just clarify that an auditor, a PC. You're told you were Natalie. You're like, oh, where's your PC? They weren't asking me, where's Natalie? You became my PC, right? If I'm
Yeah,
gonna
exactly.
audit you, then you're no longer you. You're my PC, and it's so possessive, right? So it's like it is
Mhm.
a role play, like auditor and PC, and then you end up locked up against your will. You cannot escape. You cannot have a safe word. You cannot say stop. If you hate it, they do it more, and
Mhm.
that is hardcore, and it is actually completely unhinged, and it's just disgusting. So we need to start asking these people that really want to stand up for the religious belief of others, if are we calling hardcore role play scenes that,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
that's what it is for L. Ron Hubbard. And if they don't know it, then read the policy, because that's the other receipt we can bring, right? Everything we say, it's because it was said in a policy. Like, no one was allowed to just make up anything,
Yeah.
and that's unfortunate because no one could rein back L. Ron Hubbard,
Definitely. Haley Cook, keep up the good work, Nellie and Serge. Hope you all stay safe. Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Haley. Thank you so much for your
It's
support.
very sweet. Jan Schwartz, Serge, what do you mean by collecting receipts? Oh, we did explain that.
Yeah, but just to re-clear it, Jen, it means that we're collecting our own evidence, that we're actually showing people what we mean when we say something, so that that's the only way to reconcile truth. That's how it works in court, right? Like, you have to back up any allegation with, oh, here's how I can prove it. It's not just like, oh, this person did, not like Scientology, oh, there's a BOMB, and then the police shows up and, okay, where's what? No, which is, that's called a delusion. If you cannot back up what you're blabbing, that's called a delusion, a false allegation, an outrageous allegation. So it's just that simple, you guys. Receipts is just, we got some proof of what we're saying.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we
Thank
are
you
gonna
so much.
wrap it up, even though I swear to God, I could talk to you for hours because I have so many questions still. So we're just gonna have to do this
To
again.
be
What do you think?
continued.
To be continued. Absolutely. Anything you want to share with everybody before we get out of here?
No, well, I'm glad that I got to have this pre-party celebration for the 10K, you guys. And
Yeah. Are you gonna go live on your channel?
yes, for sure. For
Yes. So
sure.
right after this?
We always celebrate it. Yes.
Fantastic. Well, that is great. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, subscribe to Literally Surge, his channel, who just hit 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. I hope to follow in your footsteps. You'll have to share your successful actions.
You're doing them already. You're doing them already. We're all doing them already. It's just organic growth and, just taking baby steps every day, showing
Yeah.
up, holding space for these unthinkable conversations. And I want to thank everyone that does follow my channel. I know that I create content that is, not easy to digest and it comes with a ton of trigger warnings, but the people that can hold space for those difficult conversations are seeing that, it empowers us as advocates to know the facts and to, if anything, and again, it's like all of us explaining the facts from our
Yeah.
own vantage point, from where we saw things. It's like no one can advocate for you because we all have such very specific things, of how our stories played out. So I appreciate all of, the people that understand that we are talking about unthinkable abuse of minors that was systemic and institutional. But the one thing that men can and won't confront is evil, is what Alvin Hubbard was counting on. He even
Yeah.
literally wrote that as a line. And we're confronting evil. We're confronting it for what it is. And we're not afraid of it. We're not afraid of calling it out. We're not going to be told what to think or what to say anymore. We're not afraid of authority. We know that the Constitution actually protects us. We have incredible lawyers helping us and mentoring us and having our backs. And with all of that support and backup, like, we're not scared now. We were scared when we were in the hotel as kids without having a shred of advocate. But today we get to be that advocate that we needed when we were stuck there. So I think that, as all of us are becoming that advocate that we wish would have been making these points when we were there. So,
So
yeah,
true. So true. Thank you so much for being here, Serge. And
thank
everybody else,
you.
get out there. Have an amazing cult free night.